All right. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order of the Tarrant County Appraisal District Board of Directors. The time is 9:02, and we have a quorum here. The only vacant member right now is Wendy Burgess, and she's going to be here, I assume, pretty soon. I understand pretty soon. At the suggestion of Jungus Jordan, we're going to reorder the agenda slightly to put the pledges and the invocation in front of the reorganization of the board. So if everybody will stand for the pledges first and then the invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. I want to welcome Pastor Ed Coe from he's the international pastor at Cross City Church in Euless, and we welcome you and thank you for being here to pray with us today. Thank you. Y'all will remain standing.
Thank you, first of all, for allowing me to lead us in prayer. I just want to read one verse in the Bible, a reminder for all of us, and from Psalm 127, verse 1, that indicates that unless the Lord builds the house, he who labors in vain. And I think this is a wonderful reminder for all of us, because we are all building a house, whether that is our marriage or our family, our business, our church, and so in our case, in this meeting. So I just want to remind all of us again, let's invite the Lord to be in our midst so that our meeting could be productive and fruitful. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we come before you this morning. We want to thank you, Lord, that we can start this meeting by inviting you to be in our midst. As this text reminds us, God, that unless we allow you to guide us, to bless us, that our meeting can be a lot of effort, but yet accomplish nothing. And so I pray, Father, for everyone here, especially the men and women in the board, God, that you have placed them in a position of strategic position, Lord, to make decisions that will impact many people's lives. And so, Lord, I pray that you will grant them incredible wisdom, insight, and fairness, and just unity and a sense of peace. Lord, I pray that each one of us here will sense something different today in this place, because we're inviting you to be in the midst, God, so that they will feel, again, that presence of yours. And so, Lord, I pray that for your blessing upon all of us, especially for these men and women, Lord, who are in the board, that you bless their marriage, their families, their health, and their finances, and most of all, God, right now, we ask that you bless this meeting. Thank you so much, God. Let everything that we do and say bring glory and honor to you. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen. Amen. Pastor Coe, thank you very much, and thank you for the word, too. We'll proceed to reorganization of the board by way of review. We don't currently have a chairman, but we will in a few minutes. So I guess I'll open the floor up for discussion about that, or if somebody wants to make a nomination. Vince?
I'd like to nominate Mr. Rich Tiot as chairman of the board.
Is there a second? There is not a second. Is there another nomination?
I nominate Tony Pompa.
Is there a second?
Second.
Nomination is second for Mr. Pompa to be the chairman. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It is unanimous. And I'll welcome Tony as the chairman.
And Tony, I gladly give you this seat.
Okay.
So, and here are your speaker cards.
I don't see.
Are they different people if they don't have anybody? Showing up left.
We had our you got a target on your back.
It's going to take me 2 trips.
can leave the coffee there if you want.
No. That's the most important thing I got.
Yeah. I think, Tony, did I just give you the?
You did. I got them right here.
There's a-
4 speaker cards.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Mr. Chair, should we re-elect our secretary? Well, is that the official title?
I don't know, do we need to do that today, or?
You had a vacancy in the chair position, and there was no vacancy in the secretary position, so I think this would be asked.
Leave that
I
alone.
was going to nominate you.
Okay, that sounds good.
I'd appreciate it if you wouldn't go anywhere, so I have to run a meeting.
Well, I got them all on my calendar. I think I'll be here for the next 4, I believe.
Very good.
Okay, so not knowing what I'm doing here, Matt, please keep me in line if I, stray too much from anything that we're doing. Okay, so I guess the next thing is to recognize visitors and hear public comments. We have 4 cards here today, and do I start the timer or somebody else start the timer? You got it. Thank you, Drew. Okay. Well, we'll get right into it. George Dodson.
And there is no podium, Mr. Dodson, so if you would just stand where you are, we would appreciate that.
I can do that. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to come this morning. I come before the board this morning to try to get something straight that the TAD IT manager told you last board meeting. Director Fuentes asked if the website had been stress tested, and the IT manager said it had been. Let me fill you in on computer performance that I spent my entire career doing. First of all, you must have measurement tools to measure the load on your computer system and applications to be able to understand what's going on. Citizens were told that there was an unusual load on the website that was unexpected. My first question is, was the prior website and system being measured? My estimate, there's one of 2 options here. Either the system wasn't being measured, or no one was looking at the measurements, or maybe they weren't qualified to analyze the measurements. Whatever, they should have been, and they should have known where their workload was coming from. But anyway, secondly, what kind of load testing was done to the website before it was put in production? Were there a set of automatic scripts being run based on the prior workload, so that when the new website was running, was it able to handle the workload and do it accurately? I helped develop an automatic workload generator that could simulate the types of workloads that in this case would be requests from TAD customers or other government agencies to access the website. I highly doubt that kind of test was done. What was the IT manager claiming was stress testing that was done? I assume it was asking staff to sit at workstations and enter transactions. To me, that is definitely not stress testing. I would be happy to sit in on a briefing from TAD with board members to help the board truly understand why there were so many problems with the website and to recommend improvements in the overall computer operations. I'm extremely disappointed that the TAD board hasn't followed through with an external consultant review of the complete IT environment that was approved over 2 years ago. I know that the interfaces between the website and the automation Aumentum did not work cleanly for several weeks this year. I don't know if it was because the Aumentum consultant left in 2022. I have no idea why those interfaces didn't work. I don't believe we can trust the appraisals from TAD until we have certainty that the appraisal software is working properly and that there are proper processes and procedures in place to provide fair and equal appraisals. You were elected to the board to provide oversight to the entire operation here, not just focus on the budget. I'm not pleased, and I know a large percentage of the Tarrant County taxpayers aren't pleased. Please take action on this soon. I would be happy to assist in defining the review process if that would help. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Potts. Next, we have Lucila Seri. Did I say that right?
Yeah, close enough. Yeah. Hello, my name is Lucila Seri. I'm an IT consultant. I'm a system solution architect specialized in aerospace and defense. And I'm very concerned about what we're doing with our systems. Honestly, if my consulting company would have implemented the system that you guys have implemented, myself and the person that hired my consulting company would be without a job. It's unacceptable that we cannot have a system that works and not even the process around our appraisal are working. To begin with, we never got the blue card with a notification. If it wasn't that we didn't go to the site, I wouldn't see how much the appraisal was. Then we have to start the process to argue it. I never got a notification of a meeting getting scheduled. Again, if I was not proactive again and go to the site and check, I wouldn't have known that I had an appointment on June 26th. While I was preparing for that meeting, I was like, let me compare other properties in the TAT site. Your search function is not working. I tried with 3 different browsers and the mobile as late as this morning. This is a web browser implementation. You guys are not reinventing the wheel. This is not an extremely complex implementation, and it's ridiculous that we're having the issues that we're having, and that the person that is causing these issues is still employed. I beg you to take corrective actions. Mr. Pompa, as the new chair, I know you're not supposed to address, but I'm hoping to see changes. But I'm actually also concerned about our new chairmanship, because in past meetings, Mr. Pompa has said that Tarrant residents want their properties to be appraised higher because you sell those properties for more. I want to tell the board that selling a property is the exception. The rule is that we live in our properties. Per state law, you are obliged to raise our appraised value once every 3 years. You have raised my property value the last 3 years in a row. My house is now worth 50% more than what it was because you constantly raise. And we have to take our time to go and protest because your assessments are wrong. You don't look inside of my house to see how my house looks. You just look at the neighborhood and your algorithm is faulty as well, sir. Because if your algorithm was right, we wouldn't get as many protests as we do. So you are costing us money because we now need $1.5 million in a legal team for protests and stuff. You are costing us money, sir. We need changes, and we need changes fast. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Eric. Daniel Bennett.
Morning, new chair. To your point, it has to be clear and convincing evidence to move your house. If it's not clear and convincing, then they cannot move the value of your house. I want to give a little history lesson. That's why I'm here today. I have to leave. I'm going to go door knocking for Tarrant County College District 4. A gentleman named Kurt Myers, a favor of Mr. Law and Mr. Craig, who was hired December of 2015. He was an ex-Manatron employee, and you can ask Mr. Dion all about that. I won't take up my time. So he works here until, 2021. He leaves in January. But in June of 2020, he tells the entire board, in 6 months, I'm leaving. So what does this board do under your leadership? Your leadership, I don't believe, Mr. Jonas, you were here. Certainly not your leadership. Come January, the consulting company he went to automatically got a contract for $96,000 without any RFPs. I mean, this is the process of this board. You go back and look. You can't make this up. It's all back. So we chased this guy because Mr. Long told the board that he was, I don't say he was so important that he could not be maintained. Obviously, wasn't enough money. He was making about $130,000 a year as a consultant with 2 different companies. But he also took Melanie with him, who was Mr. Law's employee down in Hood County. So not only did he leave and we chased him, he took one of our employees, who was under Troy Hansen, which you don't know Troy Hansen. He works in Parker County for Mr. Armstrong's brother. He is chief appraiser in Parker. So then he hoodwinks the board and he quits. Now he's working for the Dallas appraisal system. That was in the middle of 2021. And now we started having all these problems in October. He got hacked. There's all sorts of things that went on. Mr. Whitehead left. So all this testing and all this stress testing and evaluating based on previous loads and all that stuff, that's just engineering, guys. You don't even have to know numbers to do this. But anyhow, and I appreciate Mr. Dotson and her comments. So then maybe he was as valuable, Mr. Law, as you stated he was. He ran, what, 86 different loops for you, programs, stuff that Momentum wasn't doing. And since he was an architect of the Manitron or was sold to Thomson and Reuters, I guess we lost somebody very valuable. And I think now, looking back on it, you were 100% correct. I didn't think I'd ever say that. All right, let's move on. William Durham's now head of commercial, and Eric Watson's head of residential. Eric's been a long-time employee, played ball for Mr. Armstrong as a T-ball. My cousin played on the same team. Him, Troy Hansen, and my cousin, they all know each other. So now he's head of residential. I want the letter that was presented that said that the person who was being considered for residential, there would have been a mass exodus if the person had been hired. We don't look externally for employees. We should. Now, I'm saying Mr. Watson's not eligible to do the job, can't do the job, and you promote within, I get all that, but he wasn't the first choice, as I understand. All right, I got a minute 10? Oh, one thing, yeah. I was hoping you would put public comments before selection of the board. Who has been to the website and who's brought up the board manual? Can I just see hands on the board who's been to had the website, actually brought up the BOD manual? Did you do it today?
Not today.
I get error codes. I can't find it. It says, oops, sorry, not there. It wasn't there last month, wasn't there the month before that. I didn't say anything because I wanted to see who went to the website to bring it up. And I documented today, and I sent out an email to make sure that it's well known that if you choose a board, the public doesn't know what you're doing because they can't read your stupid manual. They got to do an open records request to get it, something very basic. So let's fix that first before we go all this stress testing and all this previous load stuff. Let's make sure the board manual can be seen by the public. That would be a great step. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Senator Crouch.
Right. Morning, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations, and board. Something I wanted to say last meeting, I didn't get a chance to say that really needs to be said is that something positive. I've had a great interaction with the staff at TAD so far this year. Everybody's been very cooperative and helpful. It's been obvious that there's challenges with the website, different things, a number of protests. As I pointed out last meeting, the way that the real estate market has gone, it created an environment because of how this whole messed up appraisal system works that a significant number of properties are being overvalued because the real estate market dropped 10% through the course of the year. It went up about 15%, dropped about 10%, and so you've got all these comps that are creating erroneous values because the valuation date is on January 1st. And I acknowledge all that. The one thing I didn't acknowledge is that the staff has been very proactive and cooperative in just helping to, work with me, and there's a lot of feedback I've got from people that have been doing a good job customer service-wise and diligence to help with people. Okay, and that's really important. In fact, I would think that's one of the most important things that the appraisal district can do is interface with the community, help inform, educate, provide resources, materials, and that sort of thing, because this whole system is screwed up, and that's what I want to spend the rest of my time talking about. When somebody calls my office, the first thing that I try and do is teach them how to protest on their own. So the conversation starts like this. Hey, what is your proposed value? And then they tell me. I say, okay, well, good news is your taxes aren't based on the market value. The taxes are based on the appraised value. They say, okay, what's that? So it's a totally different number. They say, well, let's protest the one that my taxes are based off of. I said, well, you can't protest that one. That's your appraised value. Well, you tell me that's the appraisal. No, yeah, but that's just the wrong word. It should be the homestead cap value. And I said, okay, so, but I can't protest that, but I can protest this one. Well, if I win, that's going to help, right? No. It's got to lower this up. You got to get it down below far enough to get the appraised value down. Even though that's not what your house is appraised for, that's what they're calling it. Okay, all right, let's just skip all that. And they say, okay, but that's what my house is based on, right? I said, yeah. And they said, well, what about the homestead exemption? What kind of benefit am I getting there? I said, well, that's the reason why there's a difference, but it's the 10% cap. It's like, well, I hear the legislature talking about this $75,000 benefit I'm going to get. Where does that come into play? Oh, that's a separate number. It's on the tax assessor's website. You got to go and deduct that from that one. So it's called your taxable value. That's what your taxes are actually based on. And they're like, okay, wait. So your taxes are based on the taxable value, but not the appraised value. Well, yeah, kind of, sort of. All right, wait a second. All right, brain is fried. They're screwed. Sorry. They don't have a chance. They say, all right, well, let's just forget about trying to understand any of that stuff. Let's just talk about what's the objective in front of us today. We've got to protest. Okay, how do you protest? You got to get comps. Well, how do I get comps? You got to talk to a realtor. I can't just go out and get these comps from my. No, it's private data. They can't give it to you. I can't give it to you. You can ask for the comps they're going to use against you, but you actually have to find somebody with a license. The good news is the realtors everywhere, they're super kind. They'll help. Me included. So, all right, that's good. Well, if you're commercial, totally different story. I don't even touch that. That information is a lot harder to come by. Commercial has a lot. It's a lot more advantageous for commercial property owners in the protesting part, but the lack of data is a tremendous part central to the issues there that create the disparity. All right. So let's get the comps together. Let's look at your comps. Let's look at the appraisal district's comps and try and analyze that for a second. Okay, so how are we going to do this? First of all, here's the date range. If you were to ask any realtor to pull comps on their own without any advanced training, they would have no clue you need to go back to January 1st of 2002 to start your search. But that's what you do. So you're kind of hosed right there from the beginning. But then the second thing we do is we have to look in close proximity to the house. I say, but you can't just look at the neighborhood. You should probably start with a half-mile radius because they're going to use the neighborhood code. And they're like, well, what's the neighborhood code? I said, well, you're not going to find this anywhere except in the appraisal district. The neighborhood code is their own invention. They just draw their own lines because some neighborhoods are small, some are bigger, so they kind of have to, cobble them together. You can't find what a neighborhood code is or what it encompasses, but that's what they're going to measure you against. So if you go into that board meeting and you're bringing properties that are in a different neighborhood code, even though you would not have ever known it was in a different neighborhood code, you're probably going to be up a creek. Okay, but you also have to adjust the comps, adjust price per square foot. If you're going to adjust price per square foot, you got to keep in mind, take the land value out. What's the land value? What's this? How do I protest that number? No, you can't protest it. You just have to take that number as the number they're going to give you like it's fact, and then you're going to come up with a price per square foot for just the improvement, and you're going to do that math. Well, what's the price per square foot? $60. Where'd you get that number? I don't know. That's the number they use, so you got to use that number. All right. This is the system we're up against. This is why it's so important to have friendly staff, and they're doing a good job this year. One point that
You're about out of time, Mr.
is legislative priorities, bring that to the surface. It's one reason why we're bringing it to your attention. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, I guess, thank you for our public comments. We appreciate you coming out and sharing those thoughts with us. We'll move on to, I guess, number 7, action items. The first thing we'll take is action regarding approval of Board of Directors meeting minutes for May 12th, 2023. I'll entertain a motion for that.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Otherwise, please go ahead and vote.
Yeah.
Any opposed? Okay. Next is the discussion and possible action on tax policy on unauthorized outside employment. self-employment conflict of interest. Mr. Law, are you doing that presentation?
Yes, actually, this was a sort of a subcommittee that the board put together to review that. Mr. Martinez, Mr. Craig, and Mr. Tepper made up that subcommittee, and I wasn't part of that. I think Mr. Martinez is going to speak to that issue.
Mr. Bruce. So the concern was, and we did meet and discuss, and I've had my own thoughts too, because I know at a meeting, I think it's back in February, we discussed this. I was coming up with different scenarios, since I'm in real estate. So basically what we did, we sat together and understand why TAD does need licensed realtors here. It helps out TAD a bunch. But at the same time, it's still, still need to protect, the others out there. So basically, came up with this, and of course, you guys jumped in to make sure that our employees who are licensed do not practice within Tarrant County. And along with that, I added language that said, if you're on a team, can't be compensated. If you're a broker, your realtors cannot, be practicing here either, because you're still getting compensated, directly. So it's just cleaning up the language. We reviewed what other appraisal districts have done. Some have totally said, no, we don't want anybody licensed. Others have said, yes, you licensed, feel free to practice within the county. So taking listening to the concerns of the public, having my own concerns, I feel like what we came up with is basically, good. Of course, if you ever have to revisit it, you always have that option to revisit it, but I think right now we're on the right path. Anything I want to add?
No, I might just talk about the language. You want to hear the language change? So on the attachment to your agenda item, should be a couple pages behind there. The current policy is at the top of the page, and really the portion of, there's always been in the policy, but it needed some additional clarification. So what the original policy said was that, and I'll skip some of the first language, but number 2 talked about employment would constitute a conflict of interest, including appraising, listing, or serving as a real estate agent or broker for the sale, trade, lease, or rental of property located in Tarrant County and not owned or occupied by the employee. So that is the language that was expanded. And so if you go down to the bottom of the page, in red is the revision, is what's being added to the policy. And so I'll read from the top of the policy. Constitutes a conflict of interest, including appraising, listing, or serving as a real estate agent or broker for the sale, trade, lease, rental of property. Employees of the district are specifically prohibited from performing any type of property tax consulting services at any location in or out of Tarrant County. Employees are specifically prohibited from performing any type of fee appraisal service within Tarrant County. Fee appraisals include any type of appraisal work for which the individual receives anything of value, including but not limited to cash, material goods, discounts, products, or services. And then the last paragraph, employees are also prohibited from participating in any type of real estate activity involving the personal use of one's real estate license or broker's license within Tarrant County. Those with a real estate broker's or agent's license cannot receive any commission, compensation, or referral fee from any real estate transaction for any properties in Tarrant County. So it doesn't eliminate someone who has a broker's license from selling their own property where they wouldn't receive a fee, but it does contemplate any other arrangements of not occurring in Tarrant County. It also, as you'll note, was expanded to discuss tax consulting and fee appraisal, because those are also professional licenses that folks could hold, could maintain, and we just felt like it was important to try to clarify everything we could clarify while we made this clarification. So that is the policy change that we are recommending. In addition to that, we've also, if you turn a couple more pages, we've always had a formal request form for secondary employment where that's got to be approved and it's got to go through a vetting process to be sure it wouldn't be a conflict. And we're going to keep that form. That form doesn't go away. But on the next page, we're adding a second letter that just is kind of another reminder, acknowledgement that we'll have folks make, especially when we know they come in here potentially with a license, one of the professional licenses. And really, this just it just mirrors that policy change that we just put in there, but it has that employee acknowledge that they understand that violation of this policy may subject me to discipline under the Tarrant Appraisal Personnel Policies and Procedures, and we just think that would be, I think that sort of meets the spirit of what you're trying to accomplish with clarifying that policy to try to make sure that we, from the time we onboard folks, that everyone's aware that that's the specifics of the policy and that's how it would apply to them. So.
I'd like to add just one thing. This letter of understanding is something that we're going to get the employees with those particular license to renew annually as well. So every year they will acknowledge the fact that they understand what the policies are with holding these appraisal license or real estate agent license or brokerage license.
Mr. Puente?
So what you just said, Jeff, is that in writing or is that just a verbal policy?
No, it's in writing.
That's going to be renewed every year.
No, it's going to be this letter right here that the person with that license will have to sign and acknowledge that I understand that I'm held to this policy.
Okay. So you're saying that the statement that it will be renewed every year is in writing in the policy manual?
No, not in the policy manual, but this letter would be contained in most likely their personnel file.
I guess I'm just getting down to what's going to cause the trigger to get it re-signed every year.
It's going to, well, we already have a process in which we get all of our appraisal staff to do a disclosure. We actually even get the board to do a disclosure to say what properties do you own in Tarrant County so that we'll know, because one of the things we don't want appraisers appraising their own homes, things of that nature. So we get disclosure statements that says I own this house or this rental property or whatever. This will be one of that, and we do that every year. So this will become part of that process where the appraisers will sign their sort of disclosures and this letter of understanding.
Okay. I do have a second question, and I'm not sure if it's to Tony or who, but was there something that, and again, I apologize because I wasn't here in February, but something that caused, was there an occurrence that caused this to come up?
Yes, Jeff, you want to?
Yeah, what happened there was that we did have an employee that worked here. This employee was a real estate broker. When we hire people in, we talk to them about the fact that you have this license. It's actually something that we desire because obviously somebody who has a real estate license, a broker's license or an appraisal license, that's a valuable asset, a valuable skill set that they possess. But we explained to them that they can't do business in Tarrant County. This particular individual was a broker. And a taxpayer, a property owner, brought to the board's attention that this person may have sold a piece of property in Tarrant County. And when I went to do a review of this, to talk to them about this, it turned out that this person actually wasn't the agent that had the listing. They weren't the agent that had that didn't do the sale, but it was an agent of theirs that had done this in Tarrant County. So that was kind of the question that was brought to the board. Because, I mean, again, our previous statement did kind of address that, but the work that this subcommittee did strengthened that even more to make sure it was clear that even if you're a broker, your agents can't do business in Tarrant County.
Okay, what happened to the employee then? Is he going to continue?
They resigned and they no longer are employed here.
All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else? Put your hand up. Any other questions or comments?
I've got a question for our attorney. This is a letter of understanding. What is the legal strength of that?
Well, I think the legal strength of it really doesn't come quite as much from the letter. I think the letter itself is really a way to get the employee to make sure that they've been informed of what the policy is and to verify that they are in compliance with it. I think there's two aspects about this that are going to really make it enforceable. For somebody who has a license under TDLR, which would be somebody who is actually an appraiser with the district, this actually dovetails very, very well with the conflict of interest policies that govern them and their code of ethics. The second part is because it is going to be a part of the personnel policy, and then part of the personnel policy dovetails with everything else that's in there to say that if you violate the personnel policy, you are going to be subject to disciplinary actions, which can take a whole slew of things, and certainly including termination, depending on the severity of the violation.
Are brokers or agents listed on any transactions?
I think my understanding is, and maybe Mr. Martinez can help me with this a little bit if I misspeak on it, but my understanding is that when you get into the actual MLS documentation, that you can see what the agent is and what the broker is who was involved in either a listing or once a sale goes through, but that information is not publicly available to where somebody at the appraisal district could go in on a regular basis, you know, monthly or quarterly or annually, and check it, that it would require somebody who has a license and the ability and the right to access MLS data to see who's involved.
So what is the mechanism to know whether or not a person is transacting in any way, property in Tarrant County?
So that is kind of the purpose of the letter of understanding is, you know, the first mechanism is that we are going to ask the employees to self-report. Beyond that, policing it does get to be a little bit difficult because that information, you know, it's not like it's just available in a public place. And so what we're going to have to do is if we get a report or we hear something or there's something that gives a trigger to look into it, we could try to investigate it a little bit better. But that was part of the reason why we drafted the letter of understanding, was so that at least at a minimum, if an employee is violating this and they are transacting business in violation of policy in Tarrant County, not only have they violated that, but they've also, you know, given false information to the district on their annual disclosure. And we did talk, the committee did at length, about different ways that we would be able to police it. And I think that the issue that we came up with is that information just isn't publicly available. MLS keeps a lot of data, but MLS keeps that data for the benefit of their members, and so they're not real excited about making that available to help people that are not their members.
Can I add to this? I think that also, since we would be asking them to sign this and doing it on an annual basis, if it does turn up that they violate this, I think it can automatically kind of elevates the severity that you signed this, you understood it, you agreed to it, but yet you still purposefully violated the policy. I think it takes it to a level of you just didn't do this by accident.
There, I think, are tools that are available to people who are real estate agents in TAD. But I think what I'm hearing is there's really no way to know. The information isn't publicly available. I know you talked about this, but
right.
What is your view?
And so, no, correct. I'm able to see as a realtor transactions, you know, who's listing it, who represented the buyer. So yeah, I can see it on the back end. And so, you know, I don't know how this would fit in, me as a board member, if I would be able to see a list of names and say, okay, you know, check it, you know, quarterly or monthly, just to say, okay, is there anything going on?
And at the same time, I think you're probably, as a member, not supposed to disclose that information to anybody.
I don't know.
So one of the things about MLS, you know, they maintain that data, as I said, for the use and benefit of their members. And it's their proprietary information. Beyond that, MLS really doesn't like it when appraisal districts get a hold of their information. And historically, there have been appraisal districts around the state who have purchased MLS data through a third party or have gotten people that work at the appraisal district or other members of MLS to give them that data, and MLS will respond to that by sending a cease and desist letter and threatening legal action. Their data is their proprietary data for them to use as they see fit in accordance with their membership agreement, and amongst the groups of people they really don't want using it, appraisal districts are right at the top of that list.
So this is basically a self-reporting mechanism. We don't have a way to legally verify it. I mean, I suppose I can call up a broker friend and they can look it up and and cryptic language tell me, you know, the fox flies at midnight or something like that, to get the point across. But even in the situation that happened before, I think there was some, we need to be able to verify that somehow.
And I was just going to point out, too, that the MLS data that we have access to, I can't speak 100% to this, but I know that we have limited access. We're not allowed to see listings and things like that. We only are allowed to see the actual sales information. So I'm not even sure if we have the ability to even see the broker, the agents, and things of that nature. But I could be wrong on that, but I do know that we don't have full access to MLS.
I'm sure that's the case. I'm just concerned, how do we know? Without...
Yeah, and if I could just comment, Rich, Tony, I guess I should be calling you by your last name, Mr. Pompa.
You can call me Tony.
All right, Tony.
All right.
You know, practically speaking, in business world, I've got 40 employees, nothing like this, and we've got policies. I'm sure there's people breaking policies, but unless it gets exposed, I don't know that. And just practically, you know, we're not going to go around investigating and stuff like that. If something's severe enough, someone's going to say something, it's going to show up, and if not, then, you know, that's just the world we live in. And so I think it's great. We're going to have them acknowledge what they're supposed to do. If they choose to break that, then that's on their conscience, and hopefully it gets reported or a public member comes up again and says something about it, and then we've got the tool to act on it at that point. But practically speaking, I don't see a way to, you can't monitor all your do nots in your policy.
Right. Well, that may have been what led to a prohibitive policy before.
Any other questions on the actual wording of the policy? Do we feel comfortable with the wording of the policy, that it addresses the concern that we have? I think it would have worked in that situation, would have been very clear with that employee that, okay, you didn't sell the property, but one of your employees sold the property, so you did benefit from that. You did take earnings. So, you know, I think if that's the case, then let's just move to vote to accept the policy.
I need to say one other thing that and I'm not trying to slow us up too much, but in the case that happened in the fall, I have information that there were some transactions that resulted in money going to that person. I don't know that, and the people that I talk to are very careful about what they say, but that's why I'm concerned about this.
Did you turn that information over to the chief appraiser?
No.
Why not?
Because it's not verifiable information.
Well, you said that you had information.
But again, you know, I mean, she resigned, so
in that case, it's okay. But I think there's enough of an advantage, and there is opportunity for malfeasance or something in that. And that's what I'm concerned about. It's not so much, you know, we can say this is not good for us to have, but there are people at the other end of a bad act that suffer for it. That's what I'm thinking about. With that, I will let you call your vote.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to accept the new, I guess, conflict of interest policy.
Make that motion.
Second. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Okay. Vote. No.
No. I vote no.
You vote no.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not that we're not on the right track. I just think it needs to be improved some.
Okay, so next item, consider authorization of refund credit of unspent revenue from fiscal year 2022.
Yes, in your, pardon me, in your packet today, we have a recommendation to take $689,435 of unspent revenue that we didn't use, and refund it back to the taxing entities. Section 6.061 of the tax code basically says that any monies that are left over at the end of the year, the board kind of has several options. One, we can commit those funds to some future expenditure, which this board has done. We can either credit those funds back to the taxing entities for their next upcoming payments to the appraisal district. This appraisal district and most appraisal districts in Texas actually wind up refunding the money back to the entities. The entities would rather have the money back now rather than crediting them to something later. So it's been when we've had the opportunity to credit money or send it back, we've done it in the form of refund. But we do have the option there to the board. It's recommended that we recommend that you take the amount of $689,435 and either credit it or refund it back to the taxing entities out of the 2022 budget.
Okay. I'll make that motion.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Yes. Okay, so, and again, staff's been very helpful to try to help me understand this, but how do we come to the $689,435? Is that 100% of the excess money we receive from the entities?
That is 100% of the excess money we receive from the entities. When you look at our budget, some of our revenue comes from the taxing entities. The majority of the revenue comes from the taxing entities, but there's some additional revenue that we generate ourselves in the form of interest on earnings.
Right.
We also obtain rendition penalties that Ms. Burgess collects and sends to us. We also can allocate some of the unspent, undesignated fund balance from the appraisal district to go towards our revenue as well.
So last month, or last meeting, the audit committee referenced a number of $2-point-something million in excess, essentially cash, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
Of that 2-point-something, the 689 was part of that.
That's correct.
So that leaves, let's call it 1.4. That is all funds that we've accumulated through the other sources?
Yes, sir. And the way the law works, we understand the law and been advised by CPAs and attorneys, is that when the board is considering a refund or a credit, we look to the monies that the taxing entities provided us, and then any unspent revenue can go back. That's this. Now, I will point out in prior boards, in prior situations, the board was considering and entertaining some ideas with regards to a homestead review. And when this subject came up many years ago, we began preparing for the idea that we're going to have to pay for it. And if the board chose to do that review, we got bids from respondents. It was going to cost anywhere from $400,000 to $2 million. And so that money was sort of earmarked as this is how we will pay for this process if the board chose to do that. The board chose not to do that, and so that money has been sitting there. Now, we also, in last year, I think it was, maybe earlier this year, the board chose to raise our contingency reserve amount from, say, 2 months to 3 months, to 25%. That utilized some of that money. And then another option that could be considered with that money is we could refund that money. We could hold that money a little bit longer from a standpoint of if there's other projects that we would like to take on, we could use it for that. Or we could increase, and Mr. Pompa had made a comment at that meeting that we discussed raising it from, I think it was 16-point-something% to 25%. He had made the comment that he'd like to see us go to 33% or have 4 months worth of reserves in the bank. And
okay, so as far as the 689, I think I understand it, so I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion on this motion?
Want me to read? Well, what's wrong?
Just thank you for the leadership in making sure that we are sticking to the budget, and it's nice to have an excess amount rather than a deficit.
Oh, absolutely.
So that's always good, and I'm glad to be able to give this back to the entities, and hopefully they pass it on as tax savings to the taxpayers. That'd be good. You have something?
Well, it just confuses me because our fiscal year is different than some of the entities' fiscal year. Some are October as opposed. So I just trying to, I guess I'm going back to my own life and thinking, how do you receive this? Which year? But it's a good thing. So
yep.
I'm okay.
They'll take the money anyway.
They'll take it.
So actually,
We'll figure that
this
out.
is saying credited or refunded. Should our vote not define if we're going to credit or refund?
I think it should.
And I would say refund.
Yeah.
But that would be a change of the motion.
what was your,
I'll accept that as a friendly amendment if that's all right with everybody.
okay, so then we have a motion to refund the $689,435 to the taxing entities. Okay. And who seconded that? You're good with that? Okay. So let's vote. All those opposed, please say yes or aye.
Aye. In favor?
In favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No. No.
I voted yes.
No means yes.
Okay, all right, well then that motion passes and I think you'll have, okay. Now we're gonna move on to, discussion and possible action items on follow-up to 2024 budget workshop.
Yes, sir. The 7D is a result of some of the comments that the board made in the last meeting about wanting something on the agenda. This sort of is a two-part issue. It's related to the budget. The board, Mr. Craig had mentioned that we would kind of put something on this budget which would allow the board to talk more about the proposed 2024 budget. It's two elements. One issue has to do with the communications consulting services, and I'm glad to say Jennifer Henderson and Christina Bella is here from the JO agency. They're here to answer any questions that the board may have. There was, I think, a couple of points at the last meeting about maybe having some questions for them. And also we put this on there because Jeff has mentioned we would bring that up as far as a budget issue. The other issue has to do with business continuity and disaster recovery cloud services and testing services. This is actually an item that we need to go and discuss in executive session due to the fact that it deals with computer system security and cybersecurity. And we will share some of that information in executive session. And if there's a need, the board can come back and reduce the budget, leave the budget the same, increase the budget related to some of those issues. So with that, Mr. Craig?
To be clear, this is not approval of the budget.
Yes, yes.
This is prior. We are required to send our proposed budget to the entities by the 15th. And there will be an actual budget hearing for approval. It'll be in August. We'll have it at our August meeting. But for now, it's just we look for guidance on what should be in this proposed budget that we want to send out to the entities for them to begin looking at and give us their feedback and, during that time frame.
And to be clear, generally, once we send it to them, we don't change it anymore after that unless they make a request, which they generally
unless they make requests, and then you leave it at the budget hearing, or, I guess there could be a case where we learn something in the meantime that would be significant that we might want to come back and.
So is this our last meeting to discuss the budget then, are you saying?
No, there would be, you have full discussion about the budget at the budget hearing itself. And there usually is.
And that's before we send it to the entities?
That's after, the budget hearing will be after the entities have had it. They'll have had it for.
But to your point, we don't make changes after it's gone to the entities. So if we're going to make a change, this would be the meeting to do it.
This would be the best time to make a change.
Because if we make changes at the hearing, we have to resend that to the taxing entities to get it approved, or?
No, the risk that you run into is the idea of sending it to the taxing entities in advance of you adopting it is to get their comment on it. So you want that to be as close to the budget that you are going to adopt as you possibly can. Once you end up actually adopting the budget, then you send the adopted budget back to all the entities, and there is a process by which they could reject the budget if they wanted to. And so the idea is you send them the proposed budget. If they have any complaints about it, you can get that worked out before you adopt it, and then hopefully you don't run into a scenario where you do get the budget rejected. But if something happens between now, or you, Mr. Puente, as a new member, if you're learning more about it between now and the date that you adopt it, and there is a change that the board wants to make, you can do it up until the date that you adopt the budget.
Which you expect that to be in August, right?
Yes, August board meeting.
And I might note too that in the budget workshop we had at the last meeting, I noted that from the version you have in your hands, I think they left the copy of the budget in the notebooks.
Yes, in here.
That I had found 4 items in there that I did need to adjust, but I had not adjusted them yet from what's in here. When you netted out the ups and downs of those items, it's going to add a $308 to the budget, which was, it's dollars, but it's kind of insignificant. But I do propose that we make those, definitely those 4 changes. And then if you decide something on these 2 items that you wanted us to bring back, we would, recommend we make that change, at least in that, to the entities to start considering.
I would anticipate any change you would make at the August budget would be a decrease in the budget, not necessarily an increase in the budget. It would be something very shocking and surprising to us if we came back and said, oh my goodness, we need to add money to at the August meeting.
So
it's been my experience, we've never done that.
So we open to comment, sir?
Well, I think that, do we want to start with maybe first on the communication consulting services?
Sure.
And see if we have any questions specifically, or do you want just kind of a general presentation by the consultants here?
Presentation.
If you wouldn't mind just kind of telling us a little bit about the scope of work that you provide for the district, what you guys accomplished in the last year, and what you hope to accomplish in the year coming up.
It's my pleasure. Thank you, Board of Directors. We first came on board just about over a year ago, May 2022. We had answered an RFP for a request to do a communications audit. We're excited to do that. We have 25 years history in Fort Worth doing marketing and public relations. And we came on board May 2022, and this was right before the record-breaking board meeting that had lines down around the building. So after coming on board, we quickly pivoted from our original scope of work to do the audit to help streamline the next board meeting. So that would be the August board meeting. So that hopefully went a little smoother than the month prior. And then we continue to do a lot of regular PR, community relations, communications with the press, and starting to do our deep dive into the organization's operations here, learning everything about you. We got a wonderful crash course in the appraisal business, and then we initially went back to what we were hired to do, was the communications audit. And through a lot of research, understanding best practices in the appraisal districts, we did a lot of research on other districts, not just in our state, but nationally. So we put together a plan for best practices, recommendations on improvements. You may want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so from that communications audit, we provided key findings that you all saw in an executive summary that was presented last year. And we also developed a communications plan that had tactics to best communicate with the community at large, the public, or the property owners here in Tarrant County, and how to communicate internally with your staff here, making sure that everybody kind of developed a really good company culture. And as it's been heard, one of the key things that people, there's not a lot people love about TAD, but something that people love about TAD is the employees here and how easy they are to work with and how much they want to help people address their problems. So we had several topics there. As Jennifer said, we got a crash course with TAD and appraisal, and from that and from our research, we did find that one of the key findings is that having somebody on staff who is a manager of communications would greatly benefit the district. While we are happy and willing to help TAD with all their media concerns, having somebody who's in-house and staff that knows the in and outs, here's day in, day out with the executive kind of team, learning as, different problems might arise or different opportunities for public relations are there. That's something that's invaluable, that has an immediacy to it, that while we can provide that, it could be provided at such a higher level by having a staff member who can manage your communications for you. Since the conclusion of the last contract, which I believe ended in December of 2022, we maintained a media relations role that we helped communicate with the media and correspond with them on the board chair change, website difficulties that were faced, the property taxing notices that went out. So we've kind of playing that role, as well as preparing a media training for the staff that was a part of those tactics that were presented last year. So we've kind of been in that role right now. For the 2023 scope, we also included more opportunities for branding for TAD, whether that be a brand update for the logo, making sure that internal documents are streamlined with maybe an updated, refreshed look, making sure that employees have similar uses of their email signatures, really just trying to unify the brand message as it's going out. And along with that, we've offered marketing consulting in terms of coming up with strategies to best communicate what TAD does and how they do it with the community.
Thank you. Any questions?
Just sort of a question, but in my experience, what I've seen is the TAD and the board are pretty much governed by state law or state entity. It says who we work for, and we work for the taxing entities. And that creates problems because in most situations, governmental entities work for the public, the taxpayer. What audiences do you think, to me, and I've said this, we're required to go 30 miles an hour, not 25, 35, 30 miles an hour. And that creates friction, as we've seen in the past. So how do we communicate differently with each of the different audiences that we have? And, one of the problems, it's the blue sheet that goes to the taxpayer. And then you've got to communicate for the entities. How do we do a better job doing that?
I think when it comes to communicating your target audiences, it's such a wide span, right? And you have people who own their homes for 30+ years, and you have people who are first-time buyers who really don't know the process too well. I know when I first bought my house, you couldn't tell me what a homestead exemption was, and I would have no clue. I think a big thing that we've noticed is that there's a lack of education in terms of TAD's actual roles and responsibilities in the appraisal and in the taxing kind of world. I think a lot of people think, oh, TAD taxes people. And so when we were reviewing and doing all our research, we noticed that that's where the disconnect lies. Even with press who asked us about taxing questions, and we're like, well, you got to go talk to these folks because TAD doesn't tax you. So I think the way we do that is really defining and refreshing how we tell TAD's story and what you all do, and then finding different avenues for communication. Some of the first-time younger home buyers really respond to video content. In the marketing and communications world, video content is skyrocketing in terms of popularity and overall ease of consumption. And then finding different ways. I know we've done several printed materials through TAD. With some of the older audience, maybe more graphically inclined documentation that kind of tells the story. We did an infographic kind of an easy breakdown for that August board meeting. You all might have seen it that we've handed out to press and to the property owners who came to speak. And we find that having kind of graphical representation is also another easier way to kind of digest the story from a property owner's perspective.
Well, again, and this is more a comment on my part, because the legislature is taking this obviously as a top priority, as it should be, because it needs to be refined, and they're the ones that can change the situation we're in. And we all know tax is a four-letter word, and certainly property tax is exaggerated. The appraisal districts as a whole, and not just TAD, all of them have, well, let me just go back up. I've seen TAD is very good internally. It's externally where we've had the issue with communicating, and that's where we depend on you and our contractor to make it. I sense we're doing better. And I know that Jeff has been out talking to taxing entities, and that's important, but it's also important that we communicate with the public in general and taxpayer. But again, it's a delicate communication process. Thank you.
It is, and it would help to have a full-time, boots-on-the-ground person doing those community relations and educating. I know Mr. Law does a good job at that, but that's not his job. He has other duties, but if you had a good communications person assisting and a team, that would be ideal.
Thank you.
So we're discussing this because of the budget. So what is the dollar amount we're spending on this service? Go ahead,
Turn
Jeff.
back to me. The reason this came up as one of the items that you wanted to come back is that for the first 2 initial years that we've had this in the budget, we had $50,000 in the budget. That very first year, it was really just a guess at what it might take to do this. We did stay within that budget. That first year, we got the communication plan and all that work done. As we're in the second year of that agreement and our statement of work, we know that statement of work is really going to be more of a cafeteria plan, that we're going to have to prioritize those things and do the things that we think would be the most effective to stay within that $50,000 budget. So what I proposed in the 2024 budget going forward was to increase that from $50,000 to $150,000, and I really anticipated just solely relying on JO to do all that work. Now, can I give you an alternative after further discussions with them and what they've said this morning? Because if we were to look at having a full-time person, adding a staff person, I've done some calculations, done some work on what that could do, how that might affect the budget. So Jennifer is very helpful because this particular personnel position is just kind of out of my wheelhouse, but she's helped me out with what the market says about that. And we've looked at Robert Half data and kind of the 50th percentile to bring in a manager position that would be in that role. And if we did that, I budgeted salary and benefits the salary would be budgeted at $104,000. The benefits would be $32,807 on top of that. So the salary and benefits for that level of the position, that manager position, with the kind of experience that they are saying we would have to go out there and seek, would be $136,807. One of the other things that we were, in that $150,000 that we initially put in the budget, we were anticipating that would help us purchase some advertising, because we have learned that we're not going to get things in the Star-Telegram with a press release. They just don't do that anymore. And so to get a message out in another media, we'll have to look at some of the community newspapers and things like that. So we have had recommendations that we would probably need to have a budget of anywhere between $2,500 and $4,000 a month. I selected the low end, the $2,500. That would be $30,000 for the advertising. And then I believe we need to continue having a professional consultant as we walk into this progress. And I left JO's amount in there at $50,000 in that scenario. So under that scenario, if we brought a person in at that salary range, if we continued to have some money for advertising, and then if we continued to maintain our consultant, it would add $66,807 to the proposed budget I've given you. So it would do that. With the budget I gave you is a 3.84% overall increase. This would move that to a 4.07% increase, from 3.84 to 4.07, increasing by $66,807. I'm always one to look at, how things look. If staying under 4% were an optic thing that you would want to maintain, one of the recommendations I might make is that we could either take money out of that advertising budget, drop that down to a lesser amount per month, get that down to somewhere around $6,000 a year. That would bring us in at 3.99%. We might be able to find money to take out of possibly an area like ARB per diem fees, where that is our best educated guess to begin with, but it's a big number. So we might be able to shave a few dollars off of there. But, if you're open to kind of what they proposed to actually bring somebody on staff, we could do it with that kind of an impact on our proposed budget, I believe.
What was the grand total after you had the $66,000?
Oh, gosh, that's the one number I didn't add to what it would be to the
just round it off.
Overall total, but I could do that real quick.
104.36.
So 137 before.
Are you talking about the overall total, the total budget?
Total. Yes.
Yeah, let me do that for you real quick.
217,000. Yeah, 217-ish.
Yeah, I'm getting about 217,000 total.
should be right around 217,000 total.
Well, I guess I'm not sure what you're asking me for.
I think
You're asking for the total budget amount?
We had 50,
If you do everything you just suggested, what would be the total?
What it does to the total budget?
Right.
The $29 million number?
Well, no,
What's
that
the number?
itself is.
You had
What-
budgeted
what-
it was 150, what would it be?
If we, it's an additional 66,807.
So 217.
So it would be 150 plus 66,807. Yeah, I'm sorry.
So 217,000.
I would propose it would be in different places, though,
Yeah.
where the 150 shows up now, that number would reduce to 50. And then we've got a category where we have advertising. We have to do certain ads already by law, and I would just add that advertising amount to that cost center. And then the personnel person would fall under the administration organization chart. So those dollars would show up in 3 different places now instead of this one place that the 150 shows up in.
So out of curiosity, do any of the larger appraisal districts have a marketing manager on staff?
Harris Appraisal District has a specific person, I think he's a former journalist that is their public relations. Dallas has for a long time had a position. Cheryl Jordan over there has been their public information officer. She's kind of, I think, transitioning to a different role over there, but I know those two for sure have had folks in those roles. Of course, Harris obviously is the largest appraisal district in the state.
I know that school districts all have a communications person, the cities all have, even the smaller cities have a communications director. Sometimes they do other roles, but most of them
So,
have.
and I want to be clear, we have in our budget now, we have a position as communication officer, that's Ricardo, and this does not supplant him. He's just spread very thin because he handles a lot of public information requests. He does a lot of work with Jeff on presentations. I think this would be a great opportunity for him to be mentored by a seasoned professional and help us then, I think, have kind of a fuller skill set on staff.
And the Public Information Office is another area in which I've contemplated for a while adding more staff to, because we get close to 500 public information requests every year. Some of them are very simple, from just a simple appraisal card, property record card, to very, very complex, huge amounts of data that people request. And so far, we've been able to manage it with the staff that we have, but it's growing. It's growing in complexity.
Well, again, going back to my experience, if you can improve your external communication, you're going to, and I can't really say you're going to save money, but you're going to save effort.
Yes.
Significantly, because we, the board, we've all dealt with a lack of credibility because we're not ahead of the communication process. But I will tell you that, to me, the 3.99 is better than the 4.07. I think that's critical that we stay under that inflation.
I fully believe that I can do that without
we can
jeopardizing any other.
But I think we will find that we improve our effort and can live within that budget.
Well, when initial issues such as crisis management and things like that came up, in talking with J.O. and Jennifer and Christina, that was something quickly that they came to and said, you'd really benefit of having someone, as they said, as Mayor Price always says, having boots on the ground right there that can deal with things immediately, rather than having to go through channels and they weren't here the time it happened, and you've got to explain it and all that sort of thing. So I agree that it would be a great addition to a staff.
JR, Joe, come.
Yeah, question for Jennifer and Christina. You can stay seated. Don't stand up. Just out of curiosity, and I've kind of mentioned this at our last meeting about getting our messages out in Spanish and Vietnamese. What kind of background do you have in that, or do you have any connections for that?
We have staff members on staff who are fluent in Spanish that we've utilized for other client works where we've translated both English and Spanish. Vietnamese we would have to contract out for, but we have lots of connections with the communications industry here in Fort Worth who often use those.
And just so you know, we've already transitioned some of our online videos, our helpful videos. We've already transitioned some of those to Spanish as well. Yeah.
Again, we're all talking about from our background. Of course, mine's only a business, and I think from the pre-coming onto the board and even now, our number one concern is public relations. We have a bad public relations image out there. It's not that the organization's not ran well. The people aren't, or when I've called personally, they're incredibly friendly in any place I've ever. Well, actually, Wendy, your office is very friendly also. So it's just amazing. Now, on the flip side, in business, I've got to make a profit because I can't do my benefits. I can't hire new people. I can't grow without the profits. I'm not opposed to a nonprofit, if you will, increasing bottom line, so let's say we go out and buy a new building or something like that. But there is a trap in government, and there's a perception by government. It's so easy to keep adding staff. I'm not saying it's not a good idea. I'm just putting a caution out there. Because one staff means another staff member, and then another staff member. And then when I see in nonprofits in particular, they hire, let's say, a communications manager or public relations or something like that. Yeah, they're there, but then all they do is they hire out more work. They hire the experts, and so it just keeps building up. We have a public relations problem. It's not our fault, but everyone perceives their, not everyone, but almost everyone perceives their property taxes too high. And if we start spending more money, then there's going to be a perception that we're causing their taxes to go up, which is not true. But it's the reality and it's perception. If anything, I'd like to see us, again, I'm just talking in general, take the budget back to 2022 or whatever the fiscal years were, and not do an increase this year. And whether that means cutting, allowing increases for staff, but maybe not increases for the executive staff to show goodwill. That's what we did at our company. We took management last year and said, I'm sorry, management, you can't, no raise for you, because we do need to raise our lower paid people and get them up. But I think the message we need out there, the only message I know that can make an impact is that we're controlling spending, we're lowering our spending, we're not increasing our spending. Changing our, I'm a marketing guy, having the logo out there exactly blah, 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 that is very powerful, but we're not selling to anyone, okay? We just got to get the public relations in line. And I'm not saying those other things aren't important, but I think this, if we're going to spend money in this area, currently the only focus, primary focus, should be public relations. And whether that means, yeah, we need some outside help to do that, or whether that means we hire a person, but hopefully, public relations is always ongoing, but hopefully we bring it down to a level that it's not a problem. So I'm not suggesting an answer other than it's easy to spend money. The public perception is going to be that we're increasing. It's going to be out there exactly where it's at. Or what are we doing to help lower our costs, to help the entities lower their costs, to get the tax dollar down for the public. So, and again, Spanish and Vietnamese, that is great. I know everyone does it, but on the flip side, it's a tiny percentage. And I don't know what that costs to do that. If it's a bit of money, great. I know one thing is, when you translate, and not because I know Spanish, but it's like we read instruction manuals and we think, oh, someone in Asia wrote this, because although it's all in English, the phrasing doesn't make sense. And so there's more to it than just simply translating.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, but anyway, my caution would be, what does it look like to the public, us expanding it? I am suggesting we find a way to lower our budget before we send it up to the entities. I think it'd be a great public statement to say we did not increase our budget this year. So.
Yeah, Tony, if I could kind of add to that, I think we added $50,000 for PR, and the budget was at 1 or 2 years ago.
Actually, 2022, and it's been in there in 22 and 23.
The second year.
Yeah, and so that number, that 50,000 is now looking like, am I seeing 250,000 round numbers?
217.
Yeah, so that's grown quite a bit for that. And sort of echoing some of what Mr. Puente was saying, the timing of implementation of that was bad as well. So when we were going through this huge uproar, we were also talking about a PR firm, and that just didn't sell well to the public. So that was another, it was just because of the timing of that. So I agree with Vince. I think it's a 4% is not as much of an increase as others are going to have, but I kind of like that idea myself too. Because right now, I just think there's a lot that doesn't, I don't know, I appreciate what y'all are doing, but there's a big hill to climb here based on what we've experienced in the last year and a half. So I don't know what we want to do with that.
Can I give you some information? Since our last meeting, I know of some other proposed budgets now. I'll know more when we get to our budget hearing, as I did last year. But what I know right now, Travis CAD in their proposed budget has a 7.55% increase, 3 new positions. And there's Denton CAD in their proposed budget has a 13.3%. They're asking to add 11 positions in that. They're asking also for their salary increase merit amount to, well, they asked for 3% COLA and a 2% merit, so a 5% total in their budget. Dallas has kind of a split year. They have a different fiscal year than we do, but their recent budget request was 6.41% increase. I'm saving the lowest one for last, actually. El Paso, kind of the same situation, 11.09%. You guys were great to let us do what we did with salaries last year to try to mediate some of the effects or moderate some of the effects of the inflation. They're, I think, doing that this year, and they've asked for a combination COLA and merit of 8.35 in theirs. The lowest that I know of so far is Harris, and their proposed budget is a 2.89% increase. Now, that's a $3 million increase on their budget. 3.5% of that is a COLA increase. But those are the ones that I know of right now. And I only say that, I'm not saying that, well, we're not that high as some of those. But I do want to stress that I think we are prudent managers, and we're, trying to do as much as we can and not go to the taxpayers to ask them to pay for that. So anyway, I had that information. I intended to share it with you anyway, and I thought maybe it was a good time to do it.
Since Jeff brought that up in concert with our comments over here, comparing to other government agencies, I mean, the federal government keeps spending more and more money. There's no end to it. The state government is moving it all over, and they're spending more money no matter what they do. And our local entities are doing the same thing. Yet there's plenty of businesses that are not able to do that. There's tons of residences that can't afford their property taxes. And not that we have control of that, but again, we have a public image crisis, and something's got to change. And so I agree with you, Jeff. From my little bit of observation, there's a lot that goes on here. It's done well, and so we don't want to change that. I think there's a message we need to get out there.
Well, I'm not opposed to having lower increases and having as low a budget as we possibly can. And I know when Jeff and I sit down and we go through this process, we keep that in mind the whole time. I would caution the board very much from a standpoint of going with another round of the management, supervisory level and management not getting a raise. That happened in 2022, I believe it was. One of the items in the letter of repair that the board has presented me with is to improve the culture. Well, in 2022, that did not improve the culture, I can assure you. We had some managers that quit, that walked away, said, I'm not working here anymore. It sent a very harsh message to especially again, when I say executive, I would say supervisors, managers, and the directors didn't get a raise that year. And it sent a really strong message to them. They were not happy. So I think, again, that's another caution, understanding the fact that we want to try to limit how much money we spend. There's an area in the budget right now that I would love to just lop off. It's $250,000. But there's a requirement in state law that says I have to send a postcard to every property owner in Texas or in Tarrant County telling them, hey, go to this website. This year, we will have spent $1 million sending out this postcard. We've asked the legislature 2 or 3 times, please make it to where we don't have to send this out. I'm not going to say it's a waste of money, but it's a huge expenditure of money.
Unfunded mandate.
100%. It's just that. But they have not made the decision to do that, and a lot of what we do is, I won't say unfunded mandate, but there are legislative mandates that says you have to do this, and so therefore it winds up taking money in order to do that. So I'm not opposed to it. I like the idea of having a 0% increase, but I think it's challenging to be able to do that with inflation and with different elements that have occurred. That, I mean, it's kind of like the city says, it costs more to fix a pothole today than it used to. And it's kind of the same way with us. It costs more to do different things than what it used to.
I think Ms. Burgess has a question or comment.
So I think that in the past, this board, absent Mr. Fuentes, since he wasn't on here before, so I'll catch you up, this board has demanded better messaging, and this is the response to the board telling the staff to increase and do better messaging to get the information out. We have an opportunity every day to educate the public because it is such a misunderstood process of how it works and how the pieces are put together. So that messaging was demanded by this board, which brought us to this point. And the number 2 item, we just talked about some unfunded mandates. And there are so many other unfunded mandates that make it into this budget that does increase it. The first part was one of the items that Jeff mentioned, that hopefully we can have that go away, and that would decrease that budget as well and have a cost savings. However, new unfunded mandates come with every session, and they have great ideas of things that do need to be done at the local level. However, there is no funding that accompanies it, and that's not just for the appraisal district. That goes to municipalities. It goes to all of the local entities. So they get unfunded mandates each time, and they just say, you shall do this, and you have to go do it, and that does hit the budget line. And then with the population, we have a lot of folks that are choosing Tarrant County to be their home, and they are choosing to move from Florida, Colorado, California, other states within, other counties within the state of Texas, because we have a fantastic economy. We have jobs. We have all of these regional job generators. Some of the individuals on this board are generating jobs for people that want to come up and work and live in this area. So to serve that population, we will continue to likely need more folks that will be able to serve those people. We can't stay stagnant in the staff, and I see that in my office as well. We have the same number of staff members as we did in 2014. However, we are serving an increasing higher population, and we cannot do that with the same number of staff. With all of the unfunded mandates, with the increased number of vehicles that are on the road, with the increased number of accounts that we must service, and the increased workload that has been given to us with truth and taxation, that type of thing, and we share that load. So I think that it is short-sighted of us to look at being able to provide services to a growing population and say that we would not need to add additional folks to the staff in any organization when your customer base is increasing. Vince, if your customer base was increasing and you needed to add managers and support staff to be able to support those customers and you did not, well then the work would fall behind. And so you as a business person, you would say, no, absolutely, we have to have support staff to support our new customers, you know. So same sort of thing with this business. It's a government business, you know. So I don't want to beleaguer, you know, one position, you know, because this board demanded that we stay on top of messaging and that we educate the public in the things that are done within the walls of this organization, because we demanded it of the chief appraiser and of the staff. You know, so we demanded it over that period of time to an increasing larger population, getting that out to an increasing, we don't all consume our information in the same way, so we have to get out to different publications. And so that's getting more difficult. We all don't read a physical newspaper. We get it in different manners. So we have to find out how people receive their information. So we have to reach them where they get their information. And those unfunded mandates also don't help as well. Maybe some of them go away. Maybe that $1 million goes away, and then that $1 million can translate into lowering that amount as well. Wouldn't that be fantastic?
Yeah,
what if we could return $1 million to the entities, and they would all be super happy? And the public would say, look at the appraisal district returning $1 million.
Let's be clear. I'm spending $250,000 a year, and I've done it now for 4 years.
Well, yeah, okay. My apologies.
That's how I
Yeah,
get
the culmination. Thank you for correcting. And unfortunately, my name is on all of those postcards, so they call me. But the intention is to go to that website, and that website has absolutely no information on it on August 7th when it is required to be delivered to the individuals, because none of the entities have adopted their rates yet. And so we have to get the information out. This will be populated as the entities go into their meetings, and it is encouraging those folks to be involved in the process just like we're doing today. We're being involved in the process with the school districts, the cities, any of those that have a board, be involved in that rate setting process, because that's really where the rubber meets the road, is when the rates are set.
Right.
So it really doesn't matter what you guys set the value at, it's where the rates are at. I will stop my talking now.
So let me put a smile on your face. Yes. One of the things, Matthew, we just verified, we thought in the original bill, there is a bill to do away with the postcard.
Yes,
and we thought in the original one, it was going to make us go one more year in the original, but they did put a start date of January 1, 2024. It has passed, it just doesn't have the governor's signature. So I propose we take the risk of pulling that out of our 2024 budget. So
that could possibly change before it goes
certainly,
to the
no, certainly, if you guys are willing to risk the governor is going to sign that, then.
Well, he has 10 days once it is sent to the governor's office to sign it, and so we would know that before it goes out to the entities, so that may.
But we need to pull it out today if we're going to pull that out. We got to get this out.
Let me bring it right back
I would
real
make
quick.
that motion right now, that we go ahead and anticipate the governor's signature on that bill.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the same thing.
That's a motion, I second it.
I think everybody seconds it.
Well, can we just wrap up the conversation on our consultant and the communications, and then we'll get into the budget? And I know that they kind of go hand in hand because it affects the budget, but let's make a decision on what we want with the communications part. And then we can go into the budget and maybe have a little bit more conversation on the budget. I did have some questions for the consultants. If anybody else does, I want to go last, but if I don't want to. I guess, you know, my question, I'm a business guy too, and I like to measure everything, right? So when I think of communications, it's kind of nebulous, and so I'd like to, you know what we're doing and measure what we're doing, and then the results. And how do we measure the results. As we all know, our public relations has suffered this past year. Maybe in the greatest understatement today, but so how do we know if we're improving that or we're not improving that? How do we measure that? Definitely, can you guys speak to that?
Yeah, we have communication tools, specifically one called Cision. It is a media and sentiment kind of measurement tool where we use to source our media lists on who we want to talk to. For bigger scale things, we know the players here in Fort Worth, so we send to them directly. However, it is a tracking tool that gauges online sentiment for articles that are being read, where they're shared, and how they're being communicated with the general public. So we use that tool primarily. For the first part of the contract, we were tracking that due to kind of the comments that came out of that first board meeting we were attached with, which was the August one. And post that, we were tracking as articles came out. However, tracking wasn't our priority as we were shifted back to our main focus of doing the communications audit. Since then, we have continued to monitor media and sentiment gauging, and that really is the best way to kind of, because like you said, communication is kind of nebulous, but that gauge is really what we use in order to kind of monitor how articles are, how it's written, how it's being perceived, and where it's being shared.
And do we get like a monthly report from you guys on all that, or?
We send press clippings over to leadership, but we can provide more in-depth reporting on that.
We haven't gotten any metrics.
Okay, because, I mean, if I'm going to spend X amount of money, I know, I want to measure what I'm getting.
And when we have an opportunity to do a more structured marketing push in terms of actually putting out ads to publications that might be educating on TAD's processes, those are really more easily trackable and measurable in terms of digital. I mean, you can track clicks and views very easily. And if we do it through print publications, which a population of Tarrant County residents do still consume print media, they provide circulation numbers that can also be contributed to measurement.
I've noticed a good bit of activity on Twitter from TAD. Do we track that? Or is that part of kind of, do we have an overall sort of dashboard, communications dashboard?
That is your internal communications team that manages that.
Ricardo does their.
Ricardo, our communications. Yeah, we do all of our analytics online. We got Google. There's that big perception idea. When you look at our analytics, it's a small population because we still have our Google ratings. They're still one of the highest for the districts. We follow the amount of people that are clicking on our website, not only through our IS department, but through the analytics with Google, phone calls, what kind of words are they speaking. We make posts, so anytime somebody Googles our lettering, it's pushing back anybody else that may be trying to overtake us to seem like the professional or the sayer of what the district does or does not do. Through our Facebook pages, education was a big thing. That's kind of been our infographics and leave behinds and things now, educate, engage, inform. So we're trying to get the process with the help of them. What part of the equation are we on that? So every city of Fort Worth, every city of Arlington, Chamber of Commerce, everywhere we've been with different school districts and all that, we're leaving behind the process, what they're getting. Then on Twitter and Facebook, it's getting ahead of the naysayers or the people who don't understand or the people who are trying to step over us and saying, we were here, this is what we educated on, this is what we said. Then we're able to see back, did they share it, how many times was it clicked on, similar things that Christina was saying. And so we've been ahead of it essentially since a small little mishap, and then we've been ahead and, or like I said, what was presented at the board meeting last time, our ratings are up, our surveys are up. It's now just saying how can we expand it further through something that I haven't specialized in, which is print media and the connections through the reporters and the editors and all that. But we have all that set up currently. It shows us at 3 to 5 stars, everything in between. We're ahead of a lot of people. I think now it's just getting some expertise so that we can take it further.
I think I'd like to make a request then, if that's the case, that really, since this is a big focus for the next year, is to get a monthly report on kind of a media dashboard, what's been done, how are things going, what kind of results are we getting from the efforts that we're making. You're already doing that. I think a monthly report so that we can see are we beginning to move in the direction that we want to move in terms of public relations. Anybody has a problem with that?
Quick comment. I don't know if Arlington ISD did this, but I know Fort Worth ISD would send out to the board members links of articles about what was going on, for where we were in print media, things like that.
Yeah, we had a weekly summary of all the media that we showed up in.
I mean,
That was always
either
good.
weekly, but maybe monthly.
We can add that to the report. I think that'd be good.
So Tony, is there an action item we're supposed to do about communications specifically?
Well,
and if so, I would have a motion in that case, if that's the case.
We also have cybersecurity involved in this
Yeah.
as well, which is.
But I didn't know if this is if we're gonna treat this separately or.
Well, it's really a discussion and possible action. I mean, for example, I don't think we necessarily, Matthew will correct me if I'm wrong, I don't necessarily think we need an action item on removing $250,000 out of the budget. I mean, if you guys are like, yeah, if that's gonna pass, let's take that out. The budget's not being adopted, the budget's not being voted on, it's just, we need guidance and directions through the discussions to make.
So on this subject, my guidance is remain at 50,000 unless a specific program is offered that will be measurable to increase the positive public relations of this organization. So that's my suggestion. I do not suggest hiring somebody at this time, or I prefer not to go see the 150, because I don't have a sense of what that's going to gain us and what we need is the public relations. Any other board?
I would agree with that too. I voted for $50,000 and now it's climbed quite a bit, so.
Well, so we'd say that it's going to stay 50 for 2024 is what you'd be saying, because you have a qualifier on there.
Well, I think anytime you can come back.
I don't think you'd want to go back and amend the budget after we.
That's the problem, is that it's not, in government entities, you generally don't want to come back and say, hey, I think we need an extra $50,000 for X. So, the idea is what we've done in the past is we can say, hey, you can have up to $100,000, but come back to us if you want to spend more than the $50,000, if you have other big projects or whatever, then bring them to us, but then that money's already in the budget. And if we end up not using it, then we have a surplus of.
But on flip side, that's kind of what I'm saying. I'm okay with 50,000 if you come back with a specific project that's going to improve public relations. Then I'd say we treat that at that time. Again, businessman.
Yeah, correct. We change with vendor. Our budget all the time.
Yeah. So
but in a public entity, you want to set your budget and not really change it throughout the year at all.
Go back and ask for more money if you need to.
Yep. So, I guess, Jeff, clarify what you're asking, because one of the things I requested from you last month was you need to propose to us what you really think you need to get the job done as we're asking you to do it. Don't short sell it. Let us tell you, no, we don't want to give you that money, and then we live with the consequences of, you said you could improve communications, we didn't give you the budget you requested, then it's kind of on us. So tell us what you're looking for first, and then.
When I proposed the 150, what I used to arrive at that number was discussions we've had with JO about what could be some of the things that would be in a statement of work going forward, what would be some of the additional things they would do. They had talked to us at that time about, they would recommend we bring somebody on full time. I kind of was hesitant about that because I sort of had the same thought about bringing additional personnel on, although I will argue that we match up very well with others that do the same thing we do in terms of the number of people we use to do that. But there obviously with personnel, there are other costs, and I'm very sensitive to that. So my hope was that we would be able to do those things, but really utilize JO probably more than they think would be wise to use him for, just because we wouldn't have that boots on the ground, I think is probably the term they used. And so that was my initial budget number. So as you asked us to come back and bring this back, we've talked in a lot more detail with JO about, let's talk exactly how this would really have to happen and how this would have to work. And so they have convinced me that we really need this key individual who brings to the table 5 to 10 years of experience already working in a municipal government situation, doing this kind of work, something that we just don't have. And then to do that, there's a cost for that, and that's what they helped me with on that cost. And so that's when I came back with this alternative, I would believe that alternative is basically where I'm at, but I'm flexible in terms of the number for advertising that they've recommended. I mean, I think that's just a decision you have to make, is how hard do you want to go at that digital communication, just to possibly scale that number back. And then, I think that we still need to have a professional consultant kind of managing the process professionally. And so that's why I would intend that we would continue to have them at probably that basic amount we've arrived at now, which we don't think really completely covers all the things we'd like them to do. But if we took some things off of their plate with an individual coming on, it probably would work.
And currently in the budget that we've already sort of worked on with, it's $150,000 is already in
there right now, right?
Yeah, right. It was $50,000 for the last fiscal year.
Yes.
But this year we've already increased it to $150. That's where we're at as of what we had approved. Again, we haven't voted on the budget, but the guidance that we gave you. And so the big difference is now really kind of restructuring, adding a staff position plus some other things.
Yeah.
And the total we said was about 217 all in. Correct. With all that. So I think that's where we are. That's the request that has been made by staff. I think, do we want to take any action, or you've heard some feedback from this side over here, do you guys have any feedback on specifically on those points so that we can either give them more guidance or take action today?
After hearing Vince, and I totally agree. In my experience in government, we always say we're going to add a position, it's going to save us money, and it ends up costing us more in the long run every change. So does the 3.84% include the 150?
Yes.
But it would not include the taking out of the $250,000 for postcards, right?
Right. No, that's still in there also.
It's going to be even lower than 3.84.
Okay. And I keep thinking in the back, we just gave back $689,000. Is that in this budget number?
No, that was money.
That was last year's. That was last year's money.
We have last year's budget number right here.
Correct.
Okay. Was the 689?
Was in last year's. It was part of last year's revenue.
It's excess cash.
But did you reduce it?
Yeah.
No,
in the budget.
Yes.
Okay.
No, I see what he's saying. Is the $600,000 is most likely in the '24 budget because it's excess. As he said, it's excess revenue because when people terminated their employment, they left employment here, and we didn't have to pay a salary, we didn't have to pay insurance, we didn't have to pay benefits. It was savings that generated as a result of not the ARB. We may not have had to pay as many of the fees because they may not have as many hearings, things of that nature. So So I would argue that, yeah, the $600,000 is probably still in the '24 budget. It'll just be realized.
Okay.
Or not.
If people choose to leave here,
we're down in we're sort of in the minutia on trying to manage the budget now, and I think probably where I'm sitting right now is going to stay at 150, but stay where we're at because unfortunately there's so many things we do not know right now. There's legislation coming out that will affect the exemptions, et cetera, which is all good, and that's where we want to be. And we want to be prudent and conservative as best we can, or at least me. So I think right now, and we still got to talk about the computer cloud and all that stuff, and what that's costing. So where I'm sitting right now is let's not add the position and go with 100. But that's me.
Yeah.
I want to point out.
Hold on. Let me come kind of this way, and then we'll come back to you.
But I think if the 250 is coming out of the postcards, not being used anymore, that was something the realtors pushed for, we're going to be disappointed. So. Evidently, it's not that important this year for them because I haven't heard anything from the state. So.
Okay.
But kind of back and forth between hiring position and staying at the 150. We did ask for, what needs to be done for us to move us forward. But I can see different points here. So still kind of.
Ms. Burgess, do you have anything else?
I think I said it earlier, you know, this board demanded a better messaging related to issues that we've seen in the past, and staff is trying to deliver it. So whatever you guys go with.
Just a real quick comment from me. I mean, I am leery of adding positions. You know, we're increasing the budget from 50 to 150,000 for that particular communications. I prefer to use that this year and again get some reports on how is that working. Is that money being invested, giving us a good return on that money in terms of better communication with the public. And then I think once we see some real good positive improvement, then we can make a decision. Do we need that position? Again, the politics, everything may change. If the taxing entities decide, hey, you know what, we're gonna reduce our rates so that our property taxes don't increase at all, that would be awesome, because then people will stop hating us because their taxes didn't go up. We don't have the control of that, but taxing entities do. So they may. I mean, Tarrant County already did pass an additional exemption. 10%. May save us about $150 or whatever, but
$7 on an average $300,000 house.
thank you very much.
18 cents a day.
So I think, you know, the politics may change, so I'd lean in the direction of not adding a position yet, because once you add it, it's hard to get rid of it. You know, consultants and expenses you can add or take away relatively easy from year to year. So that's kind of the direction I'm leaning. I'm sorry.
I'm kind of there with you. The PR problem that we have doesn't relate to y'all being here. You didn't cause it, or anything like that. If we can just quit stepping in it, I think we'll do a lot for our PR. And so I'm kind of like that. Let's take it a step at a time and not a big leap. I think that's probably kind of the consensus that we're forming here.
Vince, did you have anything else?
No, sir.
Okay, so then, do we need any action, because we already sort of kind of approved that?
Take the action by telling me what you want in there.
Okay, so we're good?
Stay at 150, correct?
Yeah, we're staying at the 150. Ladies, thank you for being here and being prepared to answer questions. Appreciate your work and you being here today. So then, do we need to move to closed session to discuss?
No, we need to discuss. I'd recommend we go and do the research report.
Okay, so we're going to skip to information items. That way we don't make you guys wait. So,
Mr. Chair, I think what you really want to do then is you sort of want to table the remaining discussion on item 7D until after the executive session, and then move on to the information items and agenda.
okay, thank you. So we'll table the remaining discussion on specifically on business continuity disaster recovery cloud services until after the closed session, and we'll move into item 8, a report by taxpayer liaison officer.
Thank you. Now that the ARB hearings are ramping up, I'm beginning to get more inquiries and questions. And for the last 2 months, April and May, I only had 7, but a lot of those were extensive research to get the answers. I work very closely with Ms. Sharp as the chair of ARB and with the TAD support staff. That helps me a lot out too, Vicki Wilkie-Berry. And I spend a lot of time looking at applications. Applications come to me, and I review them to see that everything there that needs to be there. I also check to see if their taxes are paid. If their taxes are not paid, they can't work on the board unless they pay them. And then another was just helping them understand what exactly is going to happen when they go to the hearing. Because a lot of times, when the hearing notice goes out, there's a lot of information that goes with it. The blue pages, you guys probably see those. And for some reason, all these people don't want to read them, you know, so, and it is a lot to read, but it's all information that they need to know, so I kind of help them through that too. So They can come in and know what to expect when they come in for their hearing. And that's about all I got. Any questions for me? Okay,
Thank you for your report. Appreciate it.
thank you.
Appraisal Review Board Chairman.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for allowing me to speak. I want to start by giving you some protest stats. For May 22nd through June the 3rd, ARB scheduled 17,557 accounts from protest, and of those accounts, 712 final orders were mailed. The ARB has been less impacted by the number of protests this year due to the TAD settlements, which has been significant, and I view that as a positive. I want to speak a little bit about membership. As of today, membership has grown over 61% this year in the last 6 months. When I became chairman this year, the ARB started with 37 members, and currently we have grown to 60. I want to speak a little bit about some changes, internal changes that have been made in the ARB. We started out with creating new scripts, and in those scripts we combined both the market and the unequal hearings. We combined that into one, and the reason being was it provided for a more expedient and streamlined hearing, and I have to say it has been well received by the property owners and the district appraisers. The other item of change this year was additional training was provided to the members. The training was intense and hands-on, and it continues even today. It never stopped. The ARB members attended between 6 and 7 training sessions, depending on their status of either being new or an existing member. The additional and ongoing training has made a huge difference. It's provided the members confidence, additional knowledge, and it has boosted morale. Moving on to scheduling. Scheduling has also been improved. Members are now notified 1 week in advance of their schedules, and I have to say they love it. I want to say thank you in regards to per diem. It was increased this year, and the ARB thanks you all very much. The last item of change was voting members that attend quorum. Another change we made was on the advice of our legal counsel, which was to make sure all voting members were invited to quorum. I know and understand that this impacted the budget, but I made this decision based on legal counsel. Going forward, I feel these changes are significant in retaining and gaining members. We're working diligently and looking forward to a timely certification. This completes my report, and thanks again for having me.
Thanks for the report, and please express our gratitude to all the members for all the work that they do to help us get through all these, all the work, all the protests and everything that we have to do. So thank you very much.
Could I ask a couple questions?
Yeah.
I apologize again, it's because of my newness. So when you said 17,557 scheduled, so y'all actually have seen that many people, or they've just been scheduled?
Those have come from protests. And then the
So you've actually seen that many people?
No.
Okay, so
Just scheduled.
okay, and then 712 final orders. That's the result of what you have seen so far.
That is correct. That is correct.
All right, and when you say membership, I believe that's the volunteers that hear.
They're actually not volunteers.
Okay, I'm sorry. You're right.
Currently, we have 60.
Okay.
And they serve on either 1 or 3 member panels.
Okay. No, I appreciate it. I just understand. Thank you.
Okay.
I have a question. There have been many, you referred to TAD settlements.
Uh-huh.
What legal form have those come in? Are the actual orders approved by the ARB?
Yes, they are
There's
joint motions.
Yeah, there's a combination. I'm
A
gonna-
joint motion. Does a joint motion, how does that affect our property value survey, do you know?
How does it affect the property values?
Does that play into the audit at all?
I'm sorry, I don't
I don't
have
think she
that
knows how to answer that question. I can answer that question for you. Yes, it does. It does. It's treated just like an ARB hearing. A joint motion is basically an agreement between the appraisal district and generally the tax agent community where they agree to a value. But what the tax agent and the property owner have is the right to go ahead and proceed to district court or arbitration through that motion. It has to be approved through the ARB, and it's treated just as if it was an ARB order in the property value study.
Okay, so
I sign a stack about like that every day.
so that won't, those settlements don't come out in an audit. They're not used.
No, they can be.
They can be.
Yeah, if one of those properties wind up selling and the state comptroller gets that sale, it likely, of course, the information that goes in the property value study is randomly selected by the state comptroller's office.
Right.
And if it's a commercial property, they could pull that property as a random sample and do an appraisal or get sales information on it.
Okay.
It's the same thing, but like the 712 accounts that they have heard and they have sent final orders on, those can also show up in the property value study.
Very good.
Okay, anything else? All right, we're going to move on to the report by Chief Appraiser.
Thank you, Mr. Pompa. Just for Vince's sake, the Board of Directors has set that the membership of the ARB can be up to 85 members, and she said we have 60 right now, so we're still 15 low. We could go up to 85. I also would like to say welcome to William Durham. William is the guy in the nice blue jacket there. William is our new Director of Commercial Appraisal. As you all know, we had David Law was in that position for a number of years. He retired, and then we actually did go out and do a search. We went out not just in Texas and not just in Tarrant County. We went out we put it on LinkedIn and things like that. William applied for it. William got the job, and welcome, William. We appreciate it. I'm sure you'll be hearing from him in the future.
Was he internal, or where did he come
He
from?
actually was an intern. Actually, William was an internal candidate, but he decided to quit, kind of semi-retire, and he left us for a while. And then when this position came open, he decided to reapply.
Okay.
So
well, welcome back.
Yeah.
Coming back.
I kind of think of him as one of those guys that says, "Tad's such an awesome place to work. I'd like to come back."
Well, that's good to hear.
14-month breaks are good for this all.
Okay, well, good. You look first.
I want to go through this quickly. With regard to our 2023 appraisal record submission to the ARB, on May 15th, I formally submitted to the Appraisal Review Board the 2023 appraisal roll as required by state law. I also need to report to the board regarding our 2023 cybersecurity training. I'm going to read this. This is the official notification to the board regarding the verification that all TAD employees who have access to TAD computer systems or databases have completed cybersecurity training with the compliance year ending June 14, 2023. This training was provided by the Texas Department of Information Resources, or commonly referred to as DIR. On our reappraisal efforts and the taxpayer protest, reappraisal activities, pretty much the majority of all appraisal notices have gone out. We will still have some one-off notices, things like business personal property accounts. We still have a few of those. BPP is always something that's a challenge because the law says that property owners have the right until April 15th to file their state-mandated business personal property rendition forms. But there's an automatic 15-day extension if you ask for it, and then there's another 15-day extension that you can ask for and get additional time. So it pushes back. And then Brad always reminds me that there's a law that says we can't send appraisal notices until we've worked out a rendition. So we normally don't send out BPP accounts until June, really. Some may go out in May, but most of them really go out in June. So they wind up having a different protest deadline for that. So we've got most of those out, and we'll just have a few more one-offs going out. We've been working informally at the front counter trying to resolve as many value disputes as possible, as Ms. Sharp said. We have a new law. You'll hear me say that a lot in this position, that says we actually have to have informal settlement conferences with property owners if they choose to. This year, we've been working really hard to deal with everyone that comes into the front counter, seeing if we can get a resolution. Now, when you ask the question regarding what types of formal documents there are, the joint motion is a formal document that is done. That's typically done with the tax agent community, but there is another formal document that we deal with generally individual property owners called a settlement and waiver of protest form. Basically, it's the same thing, except the settlement waiver of protest form does not allow the property owner to change their mind and file a lawsuit or go to arbitration. Once they've signed that, the matter is resolved. It's settled. The joint motion, though, on the other hand, is a mechanism in which the agents can sign off, but then their clients can still sue us or go to arbitration. So we're working hard to do that. I want to give you some numbers. I may overwhelm you with numbers here, but bear with me. I'll just round them to the nearest thousands, okay? Latest protest numbers from TAD. Right now, we have received 196,000 protests. That number will go up. There's still people that, late protests that come out. Last year, in comparison, we had 197,000 protests. Of those 196,000 protests, we have already closed out 64,042 of those protests. Some of them have been a result through the ARB determinations. The majority of them, though, have been through either some type of informal settlement conference or settlement negotiation. There are more that are currently closed. However, it's either data entry that has not been completed or the owner or agent has not returned signed documents to us. So I know that there's more than 64,000 closed accounts. Right now, of the 196,000 protests, 38,000 of them were filed by individuals, 157,000 of them were filed by tax agents. Obviously, we get a lot more property protests through the agent community than we do through individuals. Talk a little bit about online, the website, and things of that nature. As of right now, we've had 111,596 protests that were filed through TAD's online protest process. Now, that includes both individuals and tax agents. To give you an idea, 32,000 protests were filed online by individuals, 79,000 protests were filed online by tax agents. So a vast majority of both sides of the protest side are coming in through our online protest process. We had 16,300 residential property owners who have used our value negotiation tool through our website. At this time, the law only requires that it be offered to residential properties. So 16,300 people have taken advantage of that. Give you some more numbers. About 8,000 accounts have been resolved as a result of an acceptable negotiation process. We have 4,000 accounts that are still in a pending status. And then we have 4,000 accounts that individuals have rejected the negotiation process. Now, when you go through this process, it'll give you the opportunity to accept or reject. If you don't reject, but you don't accept, you go into a pending status. You can later on come back in and accept it, or you can later on come back in and reject it. 4,000 people, when they were given that option to accept or reject, they chose to reject it. At that particular time, you have the right or the option to go. Do you want to just go back out and go have lunch, or do you want to file a protest? I don't know of those 4,000 how many chose to go on through the protest process or whether they just said, I'm done, and did something different.
Question.
Yes.
If they choose, I think you've already said so, if they don't take action, they can always go back and accept the offer.
Up until the protest deadline, which what I think in this particular case here is that we have 4,000 accounts that they didn't take action, they didn't accept, they didn't reject, they just didn't go back.
Thank you.
So most likely their options are now over unless they did proceed and file a protest, because the protest deadline has passed on the vast majority of these. We did have 300, and I've gotten this question before. We had 300 that did not qualify for the negotiation process. And people are like, well, why can't I do this? Well, that's mainly because their value was already way below the ranges that our systems look at. If your house is valued at $300,000 and our systems, our data come back and say, well, it should be between $500 and $400, it's saying you're not going to be. There's no offer we can make you. There's no offer. You want it less than $300, and our ranges are already up higher than that. So
why would that happen though? Why would it be so different from your range?
I'm just making something up. Most of the time they're not that widely skewed.
So one of the things that can happen is if market value on a house goes up to $500,000 and it's at $300, it can only go to $330. The market value is still way above that number.
No, I get the difference between the market value and the taxable value.
But I do want to
all the different values that Chandler, mentioned earlier.
I do want to point out though the value negotiation thing is only looking at market value. Yeah. We're not discussing what the appraised value is. But 300 did not qualify, if you will. Appraisal staff efforts. Here's some information that Ms. Sharp kind of alluded to. We have agreed to 30,257 agent joint motions. These are settlements that the agents have signed off on. Again, they're resolved, they're done, with the one exception that of these 30,000 folks, they still have the right to sue us or go to binding arbitration. We currently have out right now, but they have agreed to it, but have not returned the signed document, 14,247 accounts that have a tentative agent accept notification. So another 14,000 properties that the agents have tentatively said we're going to accept it. We have 5,600 signed settlement and waiver of protest that have been received at the front counter. Again, it's still a formal document, just doesn't carry the same. 5,600. Those have been people that we have served over this past protest time, approximately 8,400 people that have walked into the front counter. And we've been able to resolve things with 5,600 of them. Residential department automation system, we have another little automated system back in the back that once a property owner files a protest, we have a team back there that will look at the protest. They may not have gone through the negotiation. They may have just mailed in their protest form. We have a team back there that'll look at that protest form, and if they'll give us an indication of what they think the property's worth, we may turn around and send them an offer. We have sent out 4,000 settlement offers, and either are waiting for those to come back in, or some of those have come back in. Over 13,000 mailed offers are pending an owner's signature. So we have mailed out quite a few offers to folks, and we're waiting on them for them to respond. And I will be giving that number there. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. We're actually, we don't do wagering around here. I love it when you go to the ballpark and the dot race says no wagering, please. But we have had some conversations about how many protests we were going to receive this year. I mean, again, the number's going to go up, but right now we're below what some of the people were saying we would wind up having as far as protests. So,
how many total accounts?
If you total accounts that we have,
that could potentially protest
1.8 million. Yeah. Now that will
commercial.
Yeah, that will include 1.1 or 1.2 million in minerals. So if you subtract that out, you're looking at about 700 to 800,000 property owners that could potentially file a protest.
Okay. Does that include business, personal property?
Yes, it does.
Okay. How many commercial and residential accounts are there?
Well, you're going to catch me off guard. There are about 55,000 commercial accounts. I will let you know, though, about 10,000 of those are exempt properties, churches, schools, offices like this. So they have about 45 plus accounts there. BPP, though, has right at about 55,000 business personal property accounts. So 100,000, let's say, 195 to 100,000 business personal property and commercial accounts. And then the rest of them, 600 and something plus on residential side.
Okay. So the 600 on say 30?
Yes.
630 on residential, and just commercial without the business personal property is
about 45.
And those very often protest. Just
almost 75 to 80% of the commercial accounts protest every year.
Okay. Very good.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff, for your report. And I think that brings us to, let's see, where am I? Okay, I know that there's specific language to send us to.
I would read it exactly as it is written.
Okay.
So where are we at in our book?
We're on number 9. We're moving on to number 9. Recess to executive session pursuant to the following parts of the Texas Open Meetings Act, Government Code, Chapter 551, for the following purposes: Section 551.089, deliberation regarding security devices, including security assessments of deployments relating to information resources, technology, and network security information. And Section 551.074, deliberation on personnel matters related to the Chief Appraiser, including deliberations on the letter of repair delivered to the Chief Appraiser on April 10, 2023. Okay, so we're going to closed session. 28, Matthew. And the first, we're going to go right back to Number 10, vote on any matters considered in executive session. There is no action to be taken after the executive session, unless anybody has a different thought, but we didn't have any. Okay. So with that, we have one item that we tabled earlier, which was action item 7D, specifically on the, well,
the second half. It was just cybersecurity.
Yeah, but there's nothing to discuss there. Follow up on the budget workshop in general, because we can talk about the budget in general. So, and I think, so.
And my observation is that I think this team is doing the best with the dollars we give them, et cetera. I'm still going to go back to the perception from the public, what the property taxes is a huge issue right now. The public relations we have as an organization is that, I'm not saying it's as bad as it was when that occurred, but it's still not, we haven't recovered from it. And so the budget's projected at a 3.86% increase, I believe. But if you go back to 2022 actual, so that's a 2-year period, that's 11.6% increase. And so apparently we had a nice increase from 2022 to 2023. So I'm saying I would like to see us rework the budget to be at a 2.8% increase. Get away from 3%, fall into the high 2s, saves money for this organization, and I think it shows strength on this board that we believe we can operate it better. So my recommendation, or I guess my motion, is to adjust the budget to somehow for them to come back at a 2.8% maximum increase.
Would you want? Hold on. Okay. Give me a second on that. Do we have a second for that motion?
I'll second.
You're making a motion. You have a second. So let's get into the discussion, because I definitely want to hear from the staff on how that would impact, and then also the mechanics of, in terms of the timeline and all that, when we could come back and see that budget, and then give you guys any further guidance that we may be able to give you.
I missed the very first part of that, but what I did do was go back and adjust the postcards that we said we were going to take out.
Yeah.
And then after seeing where that put us, I arbitrarily reduced the ARB per diem rate that I put in there, which was just carried over this year's per diem, by $25,000, and that got the overall increase to 2.94% in the budget overall, and for the entities, it would be a 2.86% increase for them. I left the 150 in there for the consultant. I left the amount that we have in there on the disaster recovery, business continuity. So that's
you already did it?
I did that to get I did that to get the number to see where that would be.
Okay.
To tell you where that would be.
That was 2.9?
Overall 2.94. For the entity side, it would be at 2.86 to them.
Because of the revenue that we generate internally.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
So, any other feedback from you?
No, I was going to actually suggest that we may be getting close there if we get rid of that postcard thing, and he was one step ahead of us.
Of course. That's why you get to pay the big bucks.
$250K.
Yes.
1% of a $30 million budget is about $300K.
Mm-hmm.
So he took the 250 out.
Yeah, actually,
basically he took 66 out too for the communications, because we were
back to
217, and we went now back to 150, and then took the 250 out. So that's about
and the increase on the per diem.
The postcard was not 250. It turned out to be 236. It was less than 250 this year, just based on what our projection was on numbers of postcards and things. But it was quite a ballpark.
So would you consider amending your motion to accept the
2.9 overall and 2.86?
2.94 and 2.86.
And again, keep in mind,
and then it's done.
Well, so here's I know this sounds silly, but it's marketing. At 2.94, the media is going to say 3%.
Mm-hmm.
At 2.8, I don't think they can say that.
The reporters are pretty good about being accurate on the 2.8 and 2.9.
They called me chairman when I was nominated. They said I was elected as chairman. I don't know about the media.
Yeah, well, I mean, I know that.
And I rejected that immediately, by the way. So, but again, and of course, it's real dollars. It sounds like it's around $600,000. That's real money.
We have acceptance, it sounds like. You want us to repeat what you?
Well, if you're trying to get to exactly 2.8 on the overall, I think I can.
You can probably do it without.
I'm probably going to take a little more out of what I just took out of.
Okay.
And the reason I took out of that one, and you had it in your notes back at the workshop, but that's one of the hardest areas for us to estimate and budget for. And so what I typically do, I looked at the last 6 years of what we've paid in per diem, and let me just give you the numbers over the 6 years. In 2017, it was $966,070. In 2018, it was $621,625. In 2019, it was $744,383. In 2020, $624,307. In 21, $696,195. And then last year, it was $406,805. I don't know if last year was an anomaly, but the average of those last 6 years is $676,564, and the average of the last 3 years was $617. We had $725 in there this year because we believed that it was going to be a big year for protests, but after hearing the report from the ARB chairman, I'm a little more inclined to think that we're going to work through it pretty well, and that what's really hard for me to get a handle on is the effect of the single member panels now, that they can have, instead of paying 3 members to hear a case, you're now just paying 1.
And to add on to that, the taxpayer gets to choose whether or not they get a single member or a 3-member panel.
So what I would say is I took $25,000 off that to get $700,000. That's what got us to that other number. I think if we stayed within that last 6 years average of 675, somewhere in there, that's probably justifiable, and I think that's going to get us down to where you want to be at 2.8 or under, if that's acceptable.
Well, if 300 is 1%, then 30,000 is a tenth of a percent, right?
If you just tell me that you want it to be under 2.8, then that's where I'll get it. Before we send it out.
And I think that you may want to consider amending the motion to provide a little more specificity. If the number for the motion is going to be 2.8% above last year's budget, and I think maybe you should also add to it to direct the staff to amend the proposed budget that's going to be sent to the entities to reflect a 2.8% increase over last year, and to take that money from the postcard line item and from the ARB per diem. And I think that gives specific instructions so that the proposed budget is one that.
So Lance, if those 2 items don't get us there?
I would say leave it at 2.8 and let them figure out what.
So I said what you just said, except for those last 2.
What would you care? I think the 2.8.
The motion is.
Would you care to make it no more than 2.8, and then if the number I get is 2.79?
Yeah.
You let me go to that?
Hey, go to 2.6. I don't care. Yeah, no, that's great.
So you'll amend your motion?
Yes.
To what Matthew said?
Yeah.
Except for the last 2 items.
We are recording.
Amend the budget to no more than a 2.8 max increase above last year's budget, but not to say taken from the.
Yeah, that's it, right, stop right where you're, I think that's good.
Yeah.
All right, any further discussion?
You're okay with it as my second? Yeah.
Okay, okay, well then let's go ahead and take a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Oh, okay, you got your direction.
Thank you, Jeff.
And then we go back to future agenda items. I believe that Mr. Puente was thinking about maybe something at a future agenda item.
No, actually, this was it.
That was it. Okay, so we dealt with it. So now, give me a little bit of the time frame or timeline and the mechanics of the budget. What happens now?
We'll come back in August. We will have in our August meeting a public hearing on the budget.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, it will be a situation where we will.
But you'll send that budget
to the 15th. We are required by law.
June 15th.
Back up. We'll send the proposed budget to the entities by June the 15th.
Okay. Yeah.
We will wait for any feedback or comment They may or may not provide us anything. Then we'll set in our August board meeting to have a budget hearing. And that will kind of be like a two-step. We'll open a budget hearing, we'll take any comments, we'll close the budget hearing, and then the board will later on take action of, do you want to approve this budget for the 2024 year?
Okay.
And then any other actions that we may have.
Okay. All right. Well, that sounds good then. If that's the last thing, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Because it's on the agenda, we need to mention that the next meeting date is set for August 11th.
Okay. Next meeting date is August 11th. Now I'll take a motion.
So moved.
Second. Everybody in favor? Aye. All right, let's go.